Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. So I've been working with people as a coach, a facilitator, a guide, a mentor, a group worker, a consultant, all sorts of different roles and capacities that I've been working with people over quite some time now. And I get really good results. My work is very, very effective. And I can say that without feeling immodest, because I know the truth of the matter. I know that it's not me that gets the results. I know that it's the clients and the workshop participants who I work with who get the results. I know the secret laws of personal growth and expansion, if you like. I know what those are. I believe in them. And I've also, through many years of personal work, actually come to a place where I pretty much embody those principles. So in other words, what I know about it, what I believe about it, what I feel about it, what I think about it, what I experience about it, and how I actually manifest it in my life are all very closely in alignment. I won't risk saying that I'm 100% in alignment, because I'm probably not 100% in alignment in that regard. And I don't know when that's actually possible. And I think that's okay. But I'm certainly much, much more in alignment in that regard than I was when I first started on this path. When I started on this path, I had some essential ideological connection with some of these principles. I had some actual felt recognition of those principles at work in my own life. I agreed with the principles. I thought they made sense. And I considered them to be honorable and virtuous. So that's where I was at the beginning of the path. I think you can see the difference between that place and the place I've just described of where I am now. So how can I say this to you without feeling it's like an incredibly egoic and egotistical statement? The reason I feel that it's not is because my alignment to those things is not a manifestation of me being a wonderful and amazing human being. It's more a manifestation of me surrendering to the aspects in which I'm not an amazing and wonderful human being, and surrendering to the fact that I do have egoism, I do have a shadow side, I do have arrogance, pride, resentment, bitterness, anger, pomposity, all sorts of aspects I have to myself. And I have surrendered and accepted to the fact that I have those. And I as a result of that, I've learned how to work with people in a way whereby I actually sidestep and perhaps even draw from those aspects of me that one could consider would interfere with my ability to be in alignment. So in other words, I'm very familiar with the aspects of me that are not in alignment. I've surrendered to those. I've surrendered to my lack of alignment, if you like, and that has brought me into much closer alignment, which might sound completely bonkers to you, but to me, it makes sense. So why am I talking about this? Because in a moment, I'm going to say what those principles are. And I'm going to say that the path to becoming really good at helping people to grow and expand is to really investigate our relationship with these principles and work towards embodying them as much as possible, truly embodying them, not just believing them, not just understanding them. And as part of that, exploring, surrendering to, understanding and accepting all of the aspects of us that are not embodying that, not in alignment with that. Because it's the acceptance of that and the surrender to that that makes a difference. Trying to get to a place where we no longer have those shadow aspects is a waste of time, because what we're doing then is we are trying to become somebody who is above those shadow aspects. Now that is the egoic path. The person who says, I have surmounted and transcended all of my negative aspects and my shadow aspects, in my opinion, is the person who has decided not to keep growing. Someone who's decided not to keep growing is not someone who's going to be very, very good and very effective at facilitating growth and expansion in another, at least not beyond any kind of superficial level. We can do it to a superficial level, and that can be useful, and it is useful. But if we want to go deeper than that and further than that, we need to actually transcend by recognizing that beyond a certain point, transcendence is impossible for us, because the shadow aspect to us is permanently hard-coded within us. So every time I say these things to you, it sounds like a complete contradiction. It sounds completely counterintuitive. But by listening to this and considering it and reflecting on it, and if to you it feels like a complete conundrum, perhaps listening to or watching this episode again and reflecting on it can be useful. Or if when you listen to me, you think, Catherine, who do you think you're talking to? I know this. I absolutely know this. Honestly, who do you think you're talking to? I would say to you, maybe reflect again, because could you be caught in the trap of, oh, I'm cured now, I'm better now, I've surmounted all these things in myself, so therefore that's why I can now help people grow, because I have actually fixed that part of me that's not in alignment with some of these principles. So without further ado, some of these principles are as follows. Number 1, human beings, like all organic beings, will naturally tend to grow and expand unless impeded. Will naturally tend and want to grow and expand unless impeded. And impedance could be impedance from another, or impedance from within oneself, or from a circumstance, or a culture, an ideology, anything. Now that's pretty fundamental. The second one is that each human being is sovereign. They are sovereign and autonomous in terms of their choices, their growth, their expansion, their mission in life, their contribution, what they need for themselves. That is another big idea, which most people would theoretically agree with. But what about when we think we know better for that person? What about when they don't seem to know what they want? What about when we believe they are damaging themselves? This particular one is particularly difficult to deal with when we are engaging with somebody who seems to be self-harming in some way. And let's face it, most of us, if we analysed our lives, or someone else analysed our lives, most of us could find incidences or examples, even in the present day, where we seem to be self-harming ourselves in some way, even if it's only that extra cup of coffee. Even if it's only that relationship with that dodgy person. Even if it's only, I don't know, not looking after our body. Whatever it could be. We can all find things in ourselves and in others where self-harm appears to be part of the cocktail. And then the idea that that person is sovereign and autonomous how can we truly embody that? Next idea. That what is good for the growth and expansion of the individual is good for the growth and expansion of the collective. That's another big idea. These ideas we can argue about, and I have argued about these ideas for hours and hours on end, and I've been paid a lot of money to argue about these ideas with people because they've wanted to really challenge themselves and argue about them. They've wanted to do that. There are more ideas. Those are the ones I'm going to give out today. But reflecting on those is really interesting. And then examining in our own lives, are we following those ideas? And then examining in our own lives, are we embodying those ideas when we deal with other people? I had in hindsight, hilarious, at the time, frustrating situation. I was at a detox retreat. So I'd been fasting I fasted for 7 or 8 days, and then I ate fruit, and I came home and brought myself back gradually onto solid food. So I'd been fasting, and thrown in with this detox event, there was a free session with a counsellor. So I thought, okay, what's the worst that can happen? So I went in, and bear in mind, I'd been fasting for 4 or 5 days at this point. So I was through the initial headaches and awful symptoms, and I was just in a very clear, open space. I didn't have very much energy, but I was super clear and super peaceful within myself. And we sat down and we started talking, and she said, right, now you need to understand, I'm not somebody who tells someone how to live their life. I'm not someone who tells people what they ought to do. I went, great. Yeah, me too. Fantastic. And then we started speaking, and I started talking about the fact that I didn't go to London any longer. I used to go to London for work, and I said, no, I don't go to London anymore. That's not something I'm doing. I probably won't again. And she said, well, for now. I said, well, obviously for now. She said, well, I think you should relook at that. What's your problem with London? I think you should reconsider that. I think you should be going back to London to do work. Obviously, there's some barrier or some block. And I thought, hold on a minute. Is this a woman who literally not 10 minutes ago told me that she never tells people what choices they ought to make or what they ought to do with their lives, who is now telling me I need to go back to London? And this continued in the same vein, that she kept trying to instruct me on how to live my life and what choices to make. And I came out of that, and I thought, what just happened? So I contacted my friend who recommended the detox retreat and told her about this woman. And she said, oh, yes, she does. That's what she does. She tells people how to live their lives and what they ought to do. And this friend of mine is actually on the board of a business. And she said, yeah, I've actually hired this woman to come in and coach some of my people. But she said, I only hire her when it's a person who actually needs someone to tell them what they should be doing, because they need it. Some of those people need that. And then that's what you have to give them, but you have to do it well, and you do it with permission. She said, yeah, that's what I've actually asked her to come in and do, because that's what she's really good at. She said, I'm really surprised that she seems to think she's someone who doesn't do that. And that really struck me. There are a lot of practitioners, and I have been one of these, and maybe still am sometimes, I need to make room for that, who believe that we are following these principles of the client is sovereign, autonomous, they will naturally grow and expand if not impeded. They have the right and the capacity to make their own choices in that regard. They will naturally grow and expand. They will naturally want to grow and expand. It's one thing to give lip service to that. It's another to actually have it all the way through us, like through a stick of rock, and to embody it. And for all of our interventions to be on that basis, in fact, not just in theory. So that's really, I think, the strongest part of the developmental path for the practitioner, which is that transition from understanding these principles to believing them, to following them in our own lives, to embodying them in how we manifest, and to actually applying them and embodying them in those situations when every part of us is screaming, tell this person what to do, tell this person what to think, tell this person what to choose, because that's what they need. I'm talking about in those situations when that has not explicitly been what's been agreed. And of course, there are situations where we contract with somebody and they say, I literally want you to give me the advice. I literally want you to tell me what you think I should do. But if you're coming from the place that I'm describing, you might agree to do that. But first, you would contract with the client and say, okay, I will do that. But do you agree that you will only follow that advice if you want to, if you, in your heart of hearts, know that that is right for you? I want you to promise not to do it just because I said it. And I've had situations where someone's asked me to do that, and I've asked them to make their agreement, and they've even made that agreement. And when I've said, actually, I'm not going to do it because I feel like you're projecting onto me too much authority right now. I feel like it would be dangerous for me to do that, and I'm not going to do it. So I have had times when I've actually not done it in that point in time. Because I'm autonomous. I don't have to take on every project. I don't have to do that. So, some of the principles of human growth and expansion, well worth exploring. If you'd like to explore this in more depth, you might check out my ebook, which is, it's on Amazon. It's also on my website. So if you want to pay for it, go to Amazon. If you want to have it for free, go to my website, which is beingspace.world. And the ebook is called What is Humanistic Coaching and Why We Care? And all of this is in there in great, great detail. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.